Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to the first episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm your co-host TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Bro, I am feeling great. And for the beautiful people who are listening to this podcast, the NBA podcast is locked in as the Hit Your Free Throws link up between me and TV. We're two individual content creators. You can check out our links in the description. We're going to throw all of the introduction stuff to the side. This is an insane week in basketball. And so with that being the case, TV, look, bro, we just got to dive straight in, man. The people came here to listen to NBA content. Let's get straight into it.
Yeah, I was gonna do some stuff, about plug your social stuff, but let's leave that to the end.
Man. Let's get into it.
Let's get right into it. And the first thing we're gonna talk about is, man, the news that broke over the weekend. I mean, this just felt like a whole saga because on Friday night, Kyrie Irving requested a trade out of the Brooklyn Nets, and we thought, you know what? That's already like a short time limit for the Brooklyn Nets, as the trade deadline is next week. But man, they moved on that quick, because on Sunday, Kyrie Irving gets dealt to the Dallas Mavericks first time out west in exchange for Dorian Finney-Smith, Spencer Dinwiddie, one unprotected first round pick in 2029, and two second round picks. I mean, Jay, that weekend was crazy. The whole Kyrie Irving news. I'm gonna throw it over to you. What were your thoughts on that trade? Because it just kind of the whole saga in general, because that was like really quick.
Yeah, man, it all really culminates to the idea that Kyrie Irving never was going to have a long-term space on the Brooklyn Nets, bro. It kind of always seemed like this was inevitable, and it seemed like the past free where he ended up having to pick up his player option was kind of just a delay to that inevitable, right? He goes out, he tells the Nets that he's going to look for suitors. Nobody really had the cap space aside from the Lakers, and even they didn't really have the money to be able to sign him directly in without having to make a trade. Initially, that would probably involve Russell Westbrook, something that they couldn't find over the summer. And so this season kind of played out in a way that, in a weird way, actually played in Kyrie Irving's favor by accident. Despite all of the off-court drama, despite all of the things that you say and hear in the media in regards to his character, him being able to come back to the Brooklyn Nets, position himself to be a lead vote getter for the All-Star team, be considered as one of the best guards in the NBA this year, and high level, actually put him in better favor as a commodity across the league. And that made a team in the Dallas Mavericks, who felt desperate to make a significant move to give Luka Doncic some help, the gumption to be willing to move off of Dorian Finney-Smith, like you mentioned beforehand, who's one of their better, if not their best perimeter defender, along with a starting caliber guard in Spencer Dinwiddie. And that 2029 pick is something that's got a huge, that has huge ramifications to it, because that's so far out that Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic could potentially not even be on the team by the time that it culminates, right? So with that being the case, the craziest part about the trade, though, TV, isn't even the trade itself, isn't even the team itself to me. It's the fact that they were able to get a organized within 48 hours of the request. This was something that when the initial trade request was made, I thought it was going to go up to the buzzer, bro. I'm thinking nobody wants to touch Kyrie Irving with a stick. What would a trade package look like? Who would be willing to go for it? Who is willing to not only go for Kyrie out of the fact that he is somebody who obviously is not as reliable in terms of staying on the floor, but who is willing to give up significant capital for a guy who could leave their team this summer, right? And so for that to get resolved in 48 hours, let me ask you this, TV, and I guess it can be a great way to transition to your thoughts on it. Is that more telling on how badly the Nets wanted to get Kyrie out of there, or is that more telling of just how bad Kyrie Irving wanted to move on? Like, who do you believe made this trade happen as quickly as it did? Who do you think have put the most pressure to get this thing done?
I think the Brooklyn Nets. And if you remember when we were on Marcus's show on Friday, we were talking about how there were basically just teams who were willing to make this trade, like right here, right now. It was the Los Angeles Lakers. We all knew that that was going to be a possibility. And the Dallas Mavericks. I was trying to push that agenda just because I felt like it was the perfect team in the perfect situation for Kyrie. And here's why. Dallas knew they effed up like Luka's situation by going all in too early. Getting Kristaps Porzingis a couple years ago, that turned out to be a flop. I think we can both agree with that. Then they kind of looked into the fact that Jalen Brunson was like an up and coming, one of the like an underrated PG coming up through the ranks. Him and Luka worked really well together. Even made it to the conference finals last year. They had something going on there, and then they fumbled it and they let him go to the New York Knicks. So two guys who you could consider secondary options or second stars next to Luka Doncic. They had him. They realized they kind of messed up, one, by not bringing Jalen Brunson back, two, by just going after Kristaps Porzingis. So now they're putting in a position where you have Luka Doncic playing the best basketball of his career, and who's your second best player on the team right now? Oh yeah, Christian Wood. So so right here, right now, you have the perfect opportunity, a star player, someone who, I mean, everyone's been saying, just get a secondary ball handler next to Luka. He cannot run the offense 100% of the time. Well, why not get one of the best ball handlers in the NBA, one of the top point guards in the NBA, albeit potentially on a 4-month rental, and just go push your chips forward. This is such a Mark Cuban move, in my opinion, because it's just like something that's like right place, right time, and you have the capital to do so. I mean, you knew that the Brooklyn Nets, they didn't care about the picks. They did not care about picks. They're still trying to compete now. So what do you give them? You give them a very good two-way wing in Dorian Finney-Smith, and you give them all. He might not even be on the team after this recording is done, but Spencer Dinwiddie, who can easily slide into the starting lineup. Those are two guys that are going to be two key role players for the Brooklyn Nets' upcoming run. You have that. You have a draft pick that you were able to attach to that trade, a couple second-round picks, and that is exactly what the Brooklyn Nets want. I think it was just a matter of perfect place, perfect timing. You have two teams. One team knows exactly what they want, and the Brooklyn Nets are put in a position where we still have to compete this year. We are still trying to go for the title. We need to get back as much as we can. And honestly, they came up better than I thought, getting Dorian Finney-Smith and Spencer Dinwiddie, two key role players. Again, they might not be done with the trades, but I think they still came out pretty damn well. But I'm going to throw this back to you, Jalen. I mean, we talked about this, like, who was more desperate. I mean, the Dallas Mavericks, we've seen the track record with Kyrie. He left the Cavs in ruins, left the Celtics in ruins, and now the Nets put him all in a precarious situation. Yes, they basically like tanked their entire defense. Is this worth it? Was this worth the risk?
Man, I think that's the scary part. Is that's such a crazy question, because I mean the way that it's been framed, and I think ESPN's Brian Windhorst like really framed this well. Like, Kyrie Irving is the big three obliterator, bro. Like, when you really look at it from a team construction perspective, think about how many big threes he's been a part of and what that has meant to the league in terms of what the framework of, I mean, really the Eastern Conference, right, for the last couple of years has been, right? Let's look back at him with LeBron James and Kevin Love, his link up with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, right? And then obviously one of the greatest, as Zach Lowe puts it, hypothetical NBA teams of all time being the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden lineup that never really culminated. So I don't even think those guys play like 30 to 40 games maximum as a complete unit.
13 games together. 13.
That's insane. Like, that's like over the course of a year and a half, they didn't even play half a season's worth of games as a full unit. And so you look at the circumstance of all of that. Something else that I thought was so important is looking back at the experiences of Kyrie Irving's words and what they mean, or maybe what they don't mean, right? There was the infamous situation where Kyrie Irving told Boston fans, "I will stay if you'll have me." Does everybody remember that?
Yeah.
I will stay.
That was a preseason too.
I will stay if you'll have me is probably infamously written on the Kyrie Irving career obituary, because genuinely speaking, what he says versus his actions cause most to not want him to stay, and therefore he ends up making moves on his own that kind of end up, I think they kind of represent more so the kind of individual that he is. And I don't mean this in terms of like a character attacking kind of way. I think I mean this more in terms of his basketball style, actually. I think that Kyrie Irving is simply just a guy that rocks to the beat of his own drum, man. And I think that's something that obviously makes you very unpredictable, both positively on the basketball court in terms of making defenders so lost on what it is you can do on a given night. But I also think from an organizational standpoint, it puts you kind of at bay with this kind of lean back of like, okay, so what is this guy gonna be able to do for us over a long-term period? And like you mentioned before, you mentioned it earlier, the 4-month rental aspect of this is so huge, which is actually why I think that Dallas isn't gonna be done. I think that 2029 pick is so far out that they still have draft capital to still be able to facilitate other trades without running into the Stepien rule. For anybody who doesn't really know what that is, that's just the one where you can't trade consecutive first round picks in back-to-back years, that kind of thing. But they're positioned to still be able to make further trades, and I think they're going to try to re-up on the defensive wings by maybe looking at a Jay Crowder or a Gary Harris, somebody of that nature who can be kind of low cost, doesn't need the ball in their hands a ton, can still shoot at a pretty solid clip, and of course go out and guard some of the better wings in the NBA. But TV, I'm going to use this as part of a transition to you in a way to ask you a question about the Kyrie Irving fit. And we actually talked off camera about the not wanting to spit the box score thing. So bear with me for a second, because I think that reading this out actually is going to be very important. So far this season, the Dallas Mavericks are 23rd in points per game, 8th in opponents' points per game, 7th in terms of offensive rating, and 24th in terms of defensive rating. Now, the weird thing about those is when you read those out loud, it's very conflicting. They're one of the better teams in terms of not letting up points, but in terms of efficiency, they're letting other teams shoot the rock like it's no tomorrow. And from the other perspective, their offense is so stagnant that they're one of the worst scoring teams in the NBA. But Luka Doncic is so effective as an offensive player individually that their offensive rating skyrockets just off of his individual play by itself. So you take all of that into consideration. You now look at it that they've added Kyrie Irving, who does need the ball in his hands as well. Let's be honest. He's one of the better catch and shoot 3-point superstars in the NBA, and that definitely helps. He's played in systems where he's played next to other ball dominant guys before. That also helps him. But you look at the Dallas Mavericks team over the last couple of seasons, and at the end of the day, the one thing that's hurt them the most is they live and die by Luka Doncic. That literally shows in just their pace of play. They're literally second to last in pace because they rock at the beat of Luka Doncic's drum, right?
Yeah.
When you put all of that together, what are your initial thoughts? And maybe not even initial, now that we've had some time to kind of think this through. What are your feelings about the fit next to Kyrie Irving, next to Luka Doncic for Kyrie Irving? Because I think it's easy to 2Kify this and say, this is the best backcourt in the NBA, hands down from a talent perspective. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah.
But from a fit perspective, do you feel as strongly about that? Or are there some trepidations that make you feel like the talent might not carry as much weight as we'd hope?
Well, I'm going to start with this, and then I'm going to move on to the positive. Their defense is going to go. Their defense, you said 23 was bad. They're going to be in the bottom 2 because of your best defenders, Josh Green at this point, and before trades are made. It's going to be a tough fight for the Dallas Mavericks. But this is why I like the fit so much. You remember the problems last year with the Dallas Mavericks. Luka Doncic starts off games like the best, looks like the best player in the league for like the first 2.5 quarters. And then what happens? He gets tired out because, like you mentioned, the Dallas Mavericks live and die by his offense. So by the time the fourth quarter comes around, and it's not just a Luka thing, if you have that much of an offensive load on you until the fourth quarter, you're bound to get tired. And that's just a human quality. But who do they bring in? What some people might say is one of the clutchest players in NBA history, one of the best fourth quarter scorers in the NBA, and Kyrie Irving. So what does that mean? Luka, do your thing. One like, for the first 2 quarters, Kyrie's gonna get his. I mean, you're gonna need it. But when it comes to the fourth quarter, and when Luka at some point gets tired out, and maybe he might not be as tired now that he has Kyrie Irving next to him, but then he can defer. He can defer to someone where you're like, I need a bucket at the end of the shot clock, at the end of the quarter. Kyrie Irving is notorious for that, and he could do that. Luka doesn't have to do his, that same. You've seen the play, right? That play at the end of games that they always do, where they like do like a high screen at the top. Luka step back three all the time. Like they've done it like probably like more than 10 times in his career.
Yeah.
Now you can switch things up. You can give Kyrie Irving the ball, and you can feel comfortable with that shot going up. It's not like there's Jalen Brunson next to him. It's not like it's Chris Porzingis. You have Kyrie freaking Irving. Sure, on a rental, but it's Kyrie freaking Irving. So when it comes to late in games, especially in the playoffs, which that the Dallas Mavericks are going to be in a lot of these close games, you're going to have someone there, not named Luka Doncic, who you still feel like is one of those top 5 bucket getters in the league at the end of games. So yeah, is the idea of 2 ball dominant guards going to be kind of tough? Yes, but it did work at Jalen Brunson last year. Is it going to be tough under defense? Yes, but as long as you have these 2 guys, you have 2 star players. If you and to win in this league, you need those 2 star/superstar players. They have that now. You have that, and now you have 2 guys that can kill teams at the end of games. It's good for the short term.
Yeah.
The long term wise, as you mentioned, it's going to be kind of tough past these 4 months to see where this goes. But as for right now, the short term, it's good. And before we move on to the next topic, because we did talk a lot about Kyrie, I do want to quote Zach Lowe on this, and he puts it perfectly in my opinion. The ceiling for this team is to conference championship, finals appearance, that type of thing, just because of how great these 2 are. But the floor is lava. The floor is lava because the moment you get into the Kyrie Irving stuff, he can sink your entire franchise as he has done in the past. So be wary, Dallas. It could blow up in your face, but there is there's an opportunity for greatness this season, and they are going all in. And that's what you love to see in the NBA. You love to see when teams are like, we have an opportunity to get this guy. We're gonna go invest in this our assets into him, and we're gonna try and shake up the league. And that's what the Dallas Mavericks did. I don't know if you know about this, but Kyrie Irving is no longer the Eastern Conference. I don't know what does that mean for the All-Star
Yeah.
thing. That's kind of a weird thing, but I guess I think he's still considered an East-Star just because he was voted in, but I digress. The All-Star reserves were announced last week, and I don't know about you, Jay. There were some surprises. We both made our picks last week. And there were some guys we didn't even have in consideration making it into the reserve picks. So I'm just gonna throw it over to you. Who do you think? I'm gonna give me one snub on both the East and the West sides that you think that you just couldn't believe made it. You couldn't believe they didn't make it.
And I think, so I'm going to start in the Eastern Conference just because of the fact that I think this one is easy. I think easily the dude who was snubbed was James Harden in the East. 21, nearly 7, nearly 11 assists, 44% from the field, nearly 39% from 3. Like the dude, I think because of playing next to Joel Embiid and the fact that despite the Sixers are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, James Harden is kind of run below the radar this season. I think from a voting perspective, I think in a weird way there's kind of some James Harden voter fatigue in a way, and I don't think I necessarily mean it from an all-star perspective, but I think people are so focused on the narrative of James Harden in the postseason that people are no longer impressed by James Harden's regular season stats. Now, pair that with the fact that everybody's averaging 21, right? Everybody's averaging 6+ assists, right? It almost dilutes how excellent James Harden has sneakily been this season because the inflation of statistics across the board has almost made him seem in a weird way, kind of pedestrian in a kind of way. And I hate to kind of say that about a guy that I think has this much all-star all-star ability still left in him. But I think that when you look at the combination of the stat inflation and the narrative around James Harden being more focused around, we're not impressed about what you do during the regular season, bro. It's about the postseason. We're tired of seeing you fold in the first and second rounds. I'm tired of seeing you play extremely well when the stakes are low. I think those kind of narratives built around James Harden make it where seasons like these, where he is playing phenomenal, are not necessarily as impressive because when those things are at the forefront. I think that's kind of the best way to phrase that is like I think that James Harden was one of those guys that I just genuinely believed was one of the better guards in the NBA. And then man, the Western Conference is where stuff gets really tricky, and I'm going to be honest. I'm between three guys, and TV, I'm sure somewhere in there you'll probably be able to break the tie for me. So the two guys that I felt very strongly about were Anthony Edwards and Anthony Davis. Those were the two that I felt extremely strong about. And the reason, I'll explain my reasoning for both of them, and then I'll name the third guy who was the wild card that I still feel very strong about, though. For Anthony Edwards, we have to admit that it is insane that this Timberwolves team is even remotely still relevant with Karl Anthony Towns going down, right? With the fact that Rudy Gobert has been like subpar at best, right? With the fact that Walker Kessler, who they traded to the Utah Jazz, might be better than Rudy Gobert right now, rookie season, right? The fact that Jared Vanderbilt is a guy that is getting legitimate trade buzz because he is a very solid he's a very solid defensive wing for the Utah Jazz. These are all guys they sent to the Utah Jazz. Throw on top of that Rudy has been underwhelming. The fit with D'Angelo Russell has been questionable, and I think that now Anthony Edwards has been on the ball so much more that him and Russell are starting to work a little bit better as a pair. But prior to this, this recent surge, the beginning of the year was really rough, and that's without even factoring in the not having Cat for the last couple of weeks to month or so now, right? So the fact that he is keeping them afloat, I think, is huge because he's been playing so well. And then Anthony Davis, I'll just basically go back to the case that I said in the TikTok. So spoiler for that. But when you look across the board from a power forward perspective in the Western Conference, or just from a forwards perspective, I just didn't feel like anybody else had a better peak stretch than Anthony Davis. And Anthony Davis had like a week and a half stretch that had everybody on talk shows going back to the narrative of, should we go back to considering Anthony Davis as the best big in the NBA? Not just definitively a top 5 big in the league like he's typically in that conversation when he plays well. No. We're talking over Nikola Jokic, the 2-time MVP. No. Over Joel Embiid, who's the guy who's been coming in second and might end up being the lead candidate for most people this year. Nah, not those guys. Anthony Davis's peak had him good enough for people to believe maybe he should be talked back into that echelon of being better than those two guys again, right? So I just think his peak was much better than a Paul George or a Jaren Jackson Jr., who he actually played more than if you look at the minutes as opposed to the games played. I just thought he had a better overall peak when he was healthy than any other forward in the West. And then the wild card is with the team that lights the beam. De'Aaron Fox, man, I got to be honest, bro. The Kings are one of the most exciting teams in basketball, and I had a really hot take before the season started on my original on one of my original podcast episodes for the Knockdown J that was kind of like a draft thing. And I stated that I thought that for the first time, the Sacramento Kings looked competent, right? You add guys like Malik Monk. You add guys like Kevin Huerter. You have a real identity with a big man at Domantas Sabonis who can facilitate, but he's just a buckets and boards demon, right? And they're third in the Western Conference. You're a liar if you thought in the West, especially with how competitive the West is right now in the standings. You're a liar if you told me you thought the Kings were going to be top 5, let alone third in the Western Conference. And yes, Domantas Sabonis has a ton to do with that. He's a lead fulcrum for how they're the number one offense in the NBA. But guess who else has a lot to do with that? De'Aaron Fox. So those were the three guys that I really struggled with. Man, you could build a pretty sick lineup out of the All-Star Snubs this year. I'm serious, bro.
You really can. Let me break that tie for you because Anthony Davis. I'm going to start with the Anthony Davis point. My thing is that if Zion Williamson has played less than 30 games, I say that he doesn't deserve to make it. So I'm basically lumping Anthony Davis in there as well. I just don't think Davis played enough games to make it. So I got some blowback on TikTok saying, okay, then why is Zion there? I personally wouldn't have Zion in the All-Star. So
agreed.
So if Anthony Davis, so if I'm doing that for Zion, I have to do the same for Anthony Davis. Fox and Edwards is what it really came down to me. But I had to go with De'Aaron Fox, man. De'Aaron Fox for me was the biggest All-Star snub in the West. And he has a chance. Steph Curry is out for probably the next month. So De'Aaron Fox has an opening there to make it. And I think he is the one that should make it. I mean, you mentioned it. Last year we had a running joke on the NBA picks. Do not bet on the Kings. And now they are a viable betting option. Like sometimes I see them like -5.5 against like a lower team. I'm like, the Kings can do that, right? They can do that. They can actually do it this year. It's not like last year where you're like, well, that's a team that they should beat. They're probably not going to beat them though. It's like it's a different like the entire script on the Sacramento Kings flipped. And as much as Sabonis is, I think, getting a lot more love than De'Aaron Fox this year, he is having a great year across the board, just going 24-6-4, and one of the like just a guard who takes over in the fourth quarter, very entertaining, makes the Kings a watchable team. I think he is the main reason for that. I think that his play this season and the fact that the Kings have completely turned it around, this is the year where he deserved it. This is the one year where you're like, okay, De'Aaron Fox for me, he deserved to be on that All-Star team. And I think there's an opening there, and I really do hope that he gets that chance this season. And the East side of things, you mentioned James Harden, and I do have him on my list. And I'm going to have to play the homework card because Pascal Siakam, man. Pascal Siakam. I'm going to tell you, there's a select few guys in NBA history who have averaged 25, 8, and 6 as Pascal has this season. And you know what? Every single one of them has made the All-Star team. The one person to break that, Pascal Siakam. And why, oh why, did 1 month of Julius Randle on national television really take him over the edge? Sure, the Knicks are good. And honestly, I mentioned this before too. If the Knicks were to have an All-Star, it's Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson deserves it over Julius Randle. So the fact that he made it, the fact that Jrue Holiday made it as a wild card over Pascal Siakam is mind-blowing to me. Because yes, the Raptors have been bad. They are currently 11th in the East. Albeit they are tied with 2 other teams with the same record. But still, you take that into account. Sure, they're not a great team. But Pascal Siakam had nothing to do, his career year has nothing to do with the Raptors bad play. He is playing just at such an elite level, and he is making the case that he is on a borderline of a top 15 NBA player this year. And the fact that he didn't even make the All-Star team with the stats that he has right now, and just the way he's just approved across the board, just does not sit right with me. Just does not. And I talked about it. Julius Randle making it over him. That is a lot of recency bias right there, in my opinion, with Julius Randle. And then Jrue Holiday. Yes, he's been great for the Milwaukee Bucks, but I do believe Harden, Brunson, and Siakam, my 3 guys who I believe were snubbed in the Eastern Conference, all deserved it over him. So, yeah, I just think that this year, I mean, you mentioned it. You can make an all-snub team, and they can go maybe 10 deep, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. We mentioned 5 guys already. We haven't even mentioned, I mean, you had your pick, which was out of left field with Draymond Green over out there in the West in the picks. And we're not even talking about, guys who missed significant time who still had great years, like a Devin Booker. We have to mention him, who had a great year. Trae Young, who's averaging 28 and 10, and we haven't even mentioned him once on this episode. I mean, if you have just any other guys that just throw out there that you believe deserved a vote, maybe even a chance at this, just throw it out there. I mean, I can
I
even
mean,
say
man, I think at the end, I mean, you're definitely right. I think there's a handful of guys that definitely qualify. I think you mentioned, I mean, Trey Young, I think was definitely the fly by night guy that it was like, wow, this dude, this dude is one of the top scorers in the NBA while also being a top 5 guy in terms of assists. And like even the voting implicated that he wasn't very high on people's radar this season. And I think
yeah,
that's the craziest part. I think, and I was actually intrigued to kind of get your thoughts on that too. Was like the idea of who you thought was like the most surprising. Like I know for me, my out of left field pick when I made my picks on TikTok. This is a great way for us to plug. Check the TikToks. We've
yeah,
been trying to do daily content over there with thoughts on the NBA. So definitely check that out. The podcast is once a week, but the TikToks are every dang
daily.
day. So stay tuned, guys. But I want to use that as a medium to like talk about the Draymond Green thing. Like that was my out of left field pick. I don't necessarily know if Julius Randle was out of left field because there was the recency bias aspect of it, but I feel like Jaren Jackson Jr. in a weird way was out of left field. You know what I mean? I think from a voting perspective, it kind of felt, at least when you look at the initial fan voting, it looked like guys like Nicholas Claxton and dudes like that were getting significant burn in terms of being considerations, right? And so you kind of look at stuff, and I think they kind of, I'm going to say this first. I do feel as though the reserves this season did kind of cater to defense or two-way play a little bit more this season than maybe in past years. Jaren Jackson Jr., I think Paul George as a two-way wing is another guy that gets consideration when you
Holiday.
look at it from that. Obviously, Drew Holiday and what he means from as a two-way player at the guard position. I think those are all things that are valuable when you talk about the idea of selecting all-stars. And I'm glad that it is being taken into consideration, especially in a year where the stats are so skewed, right? I am glad that they take it into consideration. But like you mentioned, bro, there are some blatant names that kind of felt a little bit better in terms of being able to select. But TV, we've kind of teased it a couple of times. And I know this isn't on the rundown, so apologies
Yeah,
in advance. But I want to use this as a great way for
yeah.
us to add something mid topic here. We've
Okay.
mentioned it multiple times about these all-star reserves and the snubs that we felt like were deserving and how deep this list really can go. Like you mentioned before, Trey Young, Jalen Brunson. I think that Jimmy Butler is another guy that's highly debatable as well, right? So TV, let's do a good old first episode, hit your free throws, all-star reserve snubs, starting 5 draft TV.
Okay. Okay.
Gotta
So
do something
so back and
fun for
forth,
the
back and forth. Okay.
just a little back and forth. No snake drafts. Let's just kind of pass it back and forth. And you know what? Just for intrigue, it's the first episode. Let's have some fun with it. We've mentioned it a couple times that there's a lot of guys to pull from, right? So with that
Yeah.
being the case, and because it was my idea, I will give you the first pick. I will do the courtesies of doing that much. And so with that
Okay.
being the case, we're gonna draft 5 guys apiece of dudes that did not make either the All-Star starting group or the All-Star reserves for either conference, but you are allowed to choose from either conference for your starting 5
Oh,
TV. Let's get
okay.
into it,
Okay.
bro.
Are we doing this the same as the thing, like 3 forwards, 2 guards?
For me, I think that we should just focus on picking the snubs because I feel
Okay.
like we should do let me phrase this for the TikTok clip. Let's choose the starting 5 of the All-Star snubs the way the NBA should, which is positionless TV. So
Position. Exactly.
let's draft our positionless top 5 All-Star reserve snubs. TV, you are first.
I mean, I mentioned them already. Give me Pascal. Just get straight
I'm
up. Give
not,
me Pascal.
hey man, I'm not mad at the Homer pick, man, at all. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm going D book. I'm going D
Deep
book.
book. Okay. Okay. No, respect that. Again, if he played like 10, 15 more games, he on 100% would have been there, but that definitely wasn't the case. You go in deep book. I'm going to go with both my biggest all-star numbers. Give me De'Aaron Fox, man. De'Aaron Fox.
I like that one, bro. I'm gonna go Anthony Edwards next. I feel like he was definitely up there as another guy that definitely deserved.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I'm I would go AD, but he's not part of my rule, so I feel like that's a bit of a thing. So I'm not gonna go AD. I just think that he just hasn't played enough games.
Fair.
I we'll go with this is kind of tough actually. Just like trying to look through each of these teams. Let's put you know what? Small backcourt, who cares? Give me Trae Young. Give me Trae
I
Young.
like it. I'm gonna go with the pick. I'm gonna take Anthony Davis.
Anthony Davis, respect on that. Let's go with over here. I mean, like again, positionless basketball. Yeah, who cares? Let's go James Harden. Let's go James
I was actually shocked that he kind of made it that far down. I'm
Harden.
not even gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
He was definitely one of those guys. And you know what? I'm gonna go small as well. I think another guy who has played really well is just on a bad team. I'm gonna go LaMelo Ball. He's had a strong year when he's been on the floor. The Charlotte Hornets just stink.
Yeah, no, he definitely like. I mean, he wasn't in consideration for the reserves, but he's having a good year. I like that you mentioned him. Give me Jimmy Butler last. Give me Jimmy.
I like the Jimmy pick, and I think my last guy. It's not really. It's one of those where it's just like a J All-Star guy. Give me Nicholas Claxton, bro. I really loved him this season. I think he's been very solid. So that's just gonna be like J All-Stars pick. You guys can let us know in the comment section down below who had the better team. But I thought that was just a great way to culminate the whole All-Star reserves topic. Just on the fact that, like we said, bro, and I think Kawhi, if he had played more, would have had legitimate
Yeah,
consideration because when he's been on the floor, he's been really good. I think there's a handful of guys that if they played more, there would be more consideration. I mean, Aaron Gordon was getting real consideration because he's having a career year, right? For the Denver Nuggets. I think Darius Garland, DG for Cavaliers, he's kind of in that underrated, sneaky good year with
yeah,
James Harden, right? Where the statistics are not eye popping because all the statistics across the league are eye popping, but he's still having a really good year next to
great.
another ball dominant guard in Donovan Mitchell. So like I think there's a handful of really great guys you could look across the league and say like they're playing really well. Miles Turner is another
Yeah,
dude. Again, Indiana hasn't been great as of late, but he's having a career season. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So I
hmm
think there's definitely a handful of guys that could have won this list, and you guys can let us know if we forgot snubs too.
I mean, we played a damn good game of who like um um. Well, I was gonna say like what about this guy? we
Yeah,
went we, we,
right.
we went we played a great game of what about this guy. But yeah, let us know down below if we are missing any players. Next topic we got on the board. Man, the NBA is just going off this week because you know what's happening Thursday, man? The NBA trade deadline.
My
The
gosh.
NBA trade deadline. And yes, we are gonna be. I mean, there are a lot of things going on. There's so many rumors. We're not that type of show to just go through all the rumors and all that because there's just too many. I mean, I mean, like, have you seen the TikTok? Have you seen the TikTok earlier this week? Furkan Korkmaz requesting a trade request was was a headline.
Oh my
That was a
god.
headline. This is the NBA. I absolutely love the NBA, but come on, guys, we're not making a headline of that. You're not making a headline. But what we are gonna do is we're gonna be going through some of the bigger trade candidates that are happening, that are always in the news, and we're basically gonna be rating them out of 10, how likely they are to be traded, and we might sneak it in there where we think we might be where they might be going. So we have three names over here for now. I might sneak in another one or two just to give you a little bit of a warning. But first player, Jakob Poeltl, Jay. What is the likelihood of him getting traded, and where do you think he'll land?
Yeah, man, Jakob Poeltl is so interesting because he was one of the higher commodities at the center position before the year started. Like he was one of those guys for the Spurs. They're like, yep, they're gonna tank for Wembanyama 100%, getting rid of Jakob Poeltl while he's at high value as one of the better defensive centers in the league. He's gonna be a guy that's gonna garner a lot of draft capital or at least a lot of trade consideration come the trade deadline. And like he just isn't playing as well. And maybe you could say that's a product of the circumstances. Maybe you could say that's because there's a lot of guys that's trying out over in San Antonio where they had Devin Vassell healthy for a while. He was playing really well. Keldon Johnson, obviously Jeremy Sochan since switching to the one-hand free throw has been beastie
Yeah,
lately. You know what I mean? So maybe it's just a product of the environment this season. It's just there's so much more focused on development this year than the season before. But I'm still gonna put Jakob Poeltl at like a solid 6, man. I think at the end of the day, I'm gonna put him at a 6 out of 10 in terms of his likelihood to be traded because I think that I think that with him being a guy who could be on the market soon, that it's best to get something for him as opposed to nothing for him. They are going to have significant cap space, being the San Antonio Spurs this summer, to just re-sign him just to like make sure they money. But I think there is legitimate draft capital they still can get for him, even though he's kind of playing below the bar. And then in terms of the team that might go after him, TV, let's stay in Texas, bro. I think Dallas. I think Dallas is going to try to go in, man, because again, we talk about the need for more defensive help. They're going to need a guy next to or behind Christian Wood. Love Dwight Powell, love Maxi Kleber, but of course, the health concern has been huge for the Dallas Mavericks in the front court, right? So being able to grab a guy like Jakob Poeltl, who has been steady, has been consistent, and does give you more defensive presence, and he might be a buy low guy with everything that I've been describing so far about how he's played so far this season. Dallas, if they're going to continue to be active in the market after this Kyrie Irving trade, they're gonna be aiming to bolster up the defense. You can go for a buy low, pick me up, like a guy like Jakob Poeltl, who can be huge in the front court for a team that definitely needs some more rim protection. They've got Christian Wood. They need more rim protection.
They need more rim protection. I like that. I like that. So you're giving him a 6 out of 10. There was a lot more. I feel like there was a lot more Jakob Poeltl trade buzz like before the start of the new year.
Yeah.
I feel like that was there too, but it just kind of died down. But even still, I still think that he is like a guy that is likely to get traded this trade deadline. And I'm gonna put out a 7, maybe a little bit higher than you. I'm gonna put out a 7 out of 10, just because he just doesn't fit the timeline of that team. And the Spurs are the type of team, kind of like the OKC Thunder, where they're just not gonna let guys just walk out for nothing. They're just not that type of team. They want to maximize their assets, and having Jakob Poeltl just take up a roster spot. Yes, he's a good player, but he's not helping them to, especially if they want to get Wembanyama next year. The team I would like to see him on, and this was like again back to before the year started, like before 2023 started. The Toronto Raptors were all over in the news for Jakob Poeltl because let's be honest, the front court depth of the Raptors. I mean, what is our team? Front court, back court? No, we just have a bunch of 6'9" guys. I don't think like there's no front court nor back court. There's just 5 hoopers who can't hit the 3 ball. Does Jakob Poeltl address the 3 ball situation? No, but in terms of a legitimate big man and someone who is not like too far off the Raptors timeline. I mean, yes, Scotty Barnes is super young and all that, but Poeltl was part of the system before. He knows like the ways of Nick Nurse. And I think just the idea of just having like the Raptors just get one solid big, just so you can like get like a different like view of the defense, just to like kind of switch things up. I think he fits perfectly right there. And there were news like earlier in the season about Gary Trent Jr. being a part of a 3-team trade, which can send him to a Clippers team, potentially a Lakers, involving Jakob Poeltl coming over back from the Toronto Raptors. I don't think that's a bad deal, and I think with the likelihood of Gary Trent Jr. still leaving Toronto, Jakob Poeltl on return does feel like it's like a good possibility. But moving on to the next player, man, this guy feels like he's been in trade rumors ever since he joined the Lakers. Russell Westbrook, Jay. What is the likelihood of him getting traded? And is anyone going to take that contract?
Yeah, man, this is definitely kicking it up a notch because this is a guy who it seemed like the obvious play was that by now he would at least be getting some more trade buzz. And it's weird, bro. I think at the end of the day, in a weird way, Russell Westbrook still being legit, like heavily in trade rumors, is actually detrimental to his 6 man of the year case. He's like the leading like candidate for the 6 man of the year according to Vegas. When is the leading candidate of 6 man of the year been on the trade block? When does that happen?
Yeah.
Like that doesn't take place, bro. He's having a very solid season, but at the same time, that should be kind of indicative that this team is only but so good with him playing even decently as well as he's been playing so far this year. So that's kind of that's the double-edged sword of it, right? You're trading for a guy that you're either going to ride out the season with and know that his money comes off the books this summer, or you're going to buy him out and kind of let him do his own thing, but that's a hefty payday. Even if it is an expiring contract, that's still a hefty amount to put on the table. I think at the end of the day, too, if you're the Lakers, you might just be smart and play the long game. I've been under this impression, and this might be a conversation for a different podcast, TV, but I've been under the impression that the best thing for the Lakers, especially after the falling through of the Kyrie Irving situation, is that they need to let LeBron James get his scoring title or his break the scoring record, right? Let me start over. I think the Los Angeles Lakers should commit to tank mode the minute LeBron James passes Kareem.
Could be tonight.
I think the very minute that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is no longer number one in scoring, the Lakers' number one focus should no longer be making the postseason. That's my belief. And that's been my belief for a good portion of this season. If LeBron James is going to average 30 plus points a game, whether AD is or is not in the lineup, play out of his mind and still lose to mediocre teams. The Lakers are one of those fly by night teams that's literally tied with the OKC Thunder, or actually they're just below the OKC Thunder by half a game at 13th in the Western Conference. You have to start being realistic about your circumstances. The Western Conference isn't getting any easier. We said it earlier. The damn Kings are third. This isn't getting easier. It's not getting easier. And even with the bottom of the Western Conference, the Timberwolves have been surviving without Cat. The Pelicans have had injury issues all year long. The Jazz weren't even meant to be this good, and they're still 10th, which is in the play-in. The Trailblazers were one of the hottest teams in the NBA to start the year off, and they've tailed off. And the Thunder were in the tank conversation, even though Shai Gilgeous-Alexander arguably is an all-NBA caliber player this year. And the Lakers are behind all the teams I just listed. There comes a point where you have to be realistic. And although you want to maximize the LeBron James era for whatever more time you have left of it, the best play you can make right now, and it sucks because the Pelicans do get your pick. I'm sorry, that is the part that sucks. But let's keep LeBron James healthy. Let's keep Anthony Davis healthy. Let's see whether or not Rui Hachimura is genuinely worth retaining. Let's let Russell Westbrook walk this offseason. If you let Russell Westbrook and Rui Hachimura walk this offseason, $32 million in cap space opens up just like that. Guess who you can get? Kyrie Irving, right? There's this medium where rather than making a trade that could potentially take on long-term salary and mess with your offseason, just ride it out. Leave LeBron James to his devices to be healthy. The rest of this, let this season just be the wash that it is. And then next season, when you have more money, more flexibility, and hopefully a more healthy version of both LeBron James and Anthony Davis, you do the last dance and you see how it goes, right? That's my mentality. And so with that being the case, I think that I'm going to put the Russell Westbrook likelihood of being traded at a 0, bro. Because I think at the end of the day, if the Kyrie Irving trade wasn't the one, trading for anybody else is a low blow and a waste of time. And with that being the case, why move on from him? Why move on from him in a trade when you know there's an easier pathway to getting better that just involves waiting it out? Just being honest, bro. Just being real.
Interesting. Because to your point, you say even though the 13th in the West is so jumbled up right now.
I know.
That 13th in the West is 5.5 games behind third.
I know.
5.5 games behind third.
But do you trust them to put that much together, TV? Do we trust the Lakers that much?
Yeah, but also the Pelicans could be 13th in next week. That's how crazy the West is right now. So the way I view it is that yes, Kyrie Irving maybe is off the table. Is probably off the table. Russell Westbrook, you can use that money to get multiple assets. And the trade that I've been seeing lately, which is the Malik Beasley, Mike Conley for Russell Westbrook and whatever picks they decide to include, that helps your team. that might make it so that you guys are in the play-in. And look, 1-2 good weeks in the West, you're gonna be fifth. You would be fifth in the West after maybe 1 or 2 good weeks. So I'm not saying it's a dead season. I think that there is an avenue there for the Los Angeles Lakers that if they make a trade to bolster their depth, to get like a legitimate starting point guard beside LeBron James, whether it's Conley, whether it's whoever else they want to go for, there is an avenue where they can still make the most out of the season. Now, look, if they were 13th and they're like 10 games behind, like sixth or something, I'd be like, yeah, it's probably over. It's 3.5 games, Jay.
I
It's
know, bro,
three and
but
a
let me
half
ask you
games.
this. Let me ask you this question, and maybe this will give me a little bit more optimism. Where do we stand on the Lakers front office from a front office perspective? Because everybody is very down on Rob Pelinka, and I kind of agree that Rob has kind of mucked it up, right? I think that after you win the championship, to go from a completely defense oriented team to flipping into a more offense oriented team that's got more ball handlers to take the ball out of LeBron James's hands and help him, be able to rest more instead of being such an on-ball threat and all these other crazy things that ended up debunking their team as opposed to making their team better. The dude wouldn't trade Austin Reeves and Max Christie to get Kyrie Irving. We got to remember, we got to make sure we factor that in. The price started with Russell Westbrook and the 2027 and 2029 picks. Good job, Rob. The pick the 2 picks was the thing that was holding everybody up beforehand, right? It was Rob being too stubborn to throw those 2 future picks in there. Give him the applause. He throws the 2 picks in there with Russell Westbrook. Reports come out that say that the Clippers come in with Terrence Mann, Luke Kennard, and a handful of picks. The price goes up now. We want Max Christie, your recently picked up rookie, and Austin Reeves, who, for some godforsaken reason, people were calling Alex Caruso 2.0, who even Austin Reeves said, I'm not the second coming of Alex Caruso. We're just 2 white guys that wore Lakers jerseys.
Yeah, exactly.
He wouldn't trade Austin Reeves, who might be the second rendition of THT for the Lakers, as another unknown guy that they kind of are taking a high swing on, that's played well here and there, but they still don't know what he does well to keep him on a team that has championship aspirations. Rob Pelinka would not trade Austin Reeves and Max Christie on top of the infamous Russell Westbrook in 2027, 2029 picks package we've heard about for the last year and a half. If he wouldn't do that for Kyrie Irving, who else is out there that garners the trade package that says, okay, I'll give up the 2027 and 2029 now? He caved on those 2 picks for Kyrie, and the price got steeper. So for anybody else, they're going to be a tier below them. The Fred VanVleet has been brought up. The Michael Beasley, Mike Conley one I've seen, like that you mentioned, I've seen that. Guys that are a tier, if not tiers below him, are the ones that you're going to still throw those 2 picks out with Russell Westbrook for, and that's going to get it done? If I'm Rob, look, I know I've been playing it close to the vest like this whole time. It hasn't been doing me no good. But I don't think we're getting anywhere further putting all the chips in the middle of the table for anybody lower than a superstar now.
Yeah, that's the thing. And they could have had something done earlier. This could have all been avoided if they just did this before the season. But here we are 2 days out of before the deadline, and we are still having this conversation. I think that the trade still does need to be made. Will it happen under Rob Pelinka? I don't know at this point. If they wasn't gonna happen with Kyrie, it's gonna be like really difficult to see it through anyone else. But it really is. I mean, but the pressure is gonna be coming from LeBron. I mean, even after the Kyrie Irving news, he went on ESPN and shared his thoughts.
Yeah.
Like with LeBron James on your team, there is gonna be enough, you know, influence there that it could still happen. But back to the original point of Russell Westbrook, I think it's gonna happen. I think it's gonna happen just because of the LeBron
What's
James
your
factor.
number on it though? What's your number on it though?
I'm like on the complete opposite spectrum of you. I think it's a 9. I think they're.
Wow.
I think it's a 9. Like they have to do something. They have. There's no way they're gonna go throughout this entire season and not make a move.
I want to make sure that I hear you say this clearly. I need you to like say this clearly. You are telling me that you believe the likelihood, with everything we've seen, the likelihood of Russell Westbrook still being traded at the trade deadline is 9 out of 10 likelihood?
It has to happen. There's no way we go through this entire season and even when he's playing decently well, he is still in his like, and it has to happen. It just has to happen. I'm at a 9 right now, and for the most likely thing, I do believe that Jazz trade is gonna happen. Malik Beasley, Mike Conley, it makes sense for the Jazz. Try to like cash in, get some like future, get even more draft picks to add to that little treasure chest that they're filling up right now. And just buy out Westbrook. I mean, what's he gonna do for your team? I mean, they really, if anything, they should be thinking more of a tank than the Los Angeles Lakers. At least they have their picks. At least they have like. I mean, like, what are the Lakers gonna be bad for? For the true. Pelicans? Hell nah. There's no way. So I think it's gonna be a 9. The fact that they don't even have their pick this year, what's the point of tanking? Pelinka, you kind of effed up this season already. LeBron is probably right now in his office, staring him down, full body, saying, "Make that call right now. I don't care. I'm gonna be in this room. You're gonna pick up that phone call. We're gonna make something happen, or I'm not leaving this room until it happens." That's probably what's happening over in the Lakers facility right now. Even though they have a game at 10 o'clock where LeBron's probably they had a chance of passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the record. But enough Lakers talk, man. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. I refuse to believe otherwise. But the final player here, in terms of players, maybe I might throw one in there, but we'll see. OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors. And there's been some more steam picking up lately when you see Shams like listing 7 or 8 teams making phone calls to the Toronto Raptors trying to acquire the services of OG Anunoby. But throwing it back to you, Jay, what are the odds of him getting traded? What is your rating on it?
Yeah, man, when I was putting this list together, I thought OG was good to put as one of the last guys because he might be the spiciest, bro. Because I think that the Toronto Raptors brass is kind of split on what the move is. I think there's a handful of people that think if you're gonna blow it up, you blow it up now before you gotta pay Gary and you gotta pay Fred, right? Because if your team is middle of the pack at best this season, I don't know if you want to still be you want to have a middle of the pack roster with the guys being more expensive. You know what I mean? The other thing is with OG Anunoby, he's a summer out. So it's not this season, it's not this off season that he's due for a payday, but he's due the next off season after that. And he becomes harder to trade, or at least the draft capital and types of assets you can get become the price is as steep as it's gonna be right now for OG. He's easily, I'll say arguably, I don't want to say easily because maybe you feel differently, but I'm going to say he's arguably the top name in the trade market right now in terms of guys that are genuinely available, right? Zach LaVine and guys like that were thrown out initially, but they're not really in the market. The Bulls have reportedly made it very clear that they want to commit to keeping the core together. Whether we believe that's a good idea or not is a different podcast, TV. We're not going to get into my Bulls fandom today. I can't allow it. Yeah. But also, Miles Turner was a guy who, with his recent extension, is a guy who seems like he's going to be under wraps. Buddy Hield is nice, but I don't think he's considered as a higher commodity than OG Anunoby. All this to say that OG is probably the top guy on everybody's board as the target to go for. So it comes down to the Raptors' philosophy, bro. I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to what they believe in terms of their team building moving forward. Do they feel like committing to a roster built around Pascal Siakam and going for consistent playoff appearances and things of that nature and continuing to go on this win now train that they're on is the way to go? Then you stick with OG because OG is a legitimate building block for this team. And I think that he is going to have a lot more development over time under this program if given the opportunity, which is kind of the tricky part about this with Pascal, with Fred, with Scotty, right? So that's the tricky part you have to ask yourself is how much are you willing to commit to OG in terms of his development and growth as a player? Or you go the other route, which is, look, Scotty's the future. This team built up a lot of 6'9" guys, and We're in Tom Thibodeau mode where everybody's playing 40 minutes. We need a refresher for a moment. We need some young influx, and we need to focus on maybe pivoting. We won a championship recently. Let's step back, take a breather, and reevaluate our roster on a cheaper scale by pseudo blowing it up with using the guys who are due contract wise. I'm kind of posturing here because I'm still trying to put the number together in my head. But I think that, and I want to pass it to you very quickly because I think that a Toronto Raptors fan perspective is way much more important than what I have to say about this. I'm going to go 5, and I hate that I'm playing the field here by going strictly down the middle. But I think that the way the Toronto Raptors feel about their roster is that they believe that similarly to last season, all they need is the right kickstart to get right back in the mix. And we saw last year when they got the right push towards the back half of the year after the All-Star break, they're pretty damn good. Pretty damn good. But at the same time, like I said, the value for the guys that are on the block, Fred, Gary, Pascal, OG, it's not going to be any higher than this. So they are in a tough spot. So I'm going with 5, bro. That's a long way of saying I'm going with 5 because I don't love the situation that the Raptors are in.
Yeah. It's tough. And here's why I'm going significantly higher than you. I'm going to put up my number there right now. I'm going an 8. I'm going an 8. And here is the reason why. I don't know if many people know about this rule in terms of the rookie scale extensions, but when OG signed his extension, 4 years, $72 million, that's $18 million a year.
Right.
The most the Raptors can offer him at next summer is a 4-year under $100 million deal, because you can only pay, I think, like 20% more than what the guy's getting right now. That's like the max contract you can give him.
Yeah.
Unless you do the designated player thing and he gets one of those near supermax contracts or whatever, which the Raptors are probably not going to do. That is the biggest reason why this trade's going to happen, because there's no way on earth that OG Anunoby, especially with the value he has around the league, there's no way he's accepting a $23 million a year offer from the Toronto Raptors. I highly, highly doubt that. So I'm putting it at an 8. As much as I love OG as a player and his whole persona around the Toronto Raptors, I'm gonna miss him a lot, but it has to happen. This trade has to happen. The Van Vliet trade probably has to happen, which is gonna be very likely in the future. And if they really are committing to getting as much assets, at least for the expiring deals, Gary Trent has to go too, as much as I want to keep him.
Where do you think OG goes though? That's the tough part.
Here's the thing. There are 3 teams, and this is me looking at a YouTube video earlier, and also just do reports of the trades. I really brought it down to 2, and I like one more than the other. I want to hear your thoughts on it, which trade you would go for. But here it is. The trade that I want to happen is if OG goes to the Portland Trailblazers for the 2025 first round pick, Gary Payton II, and Shaedon Sharpe. That's the trade I want to do. But here's the flip side, and this is what I think is going to happen. The Memphis Grizzlies, they have some young guys there. OG next to Jaren Jackson Jr. as a defense just seems unfair to the rest of the league, to be honest.
Seriously.
And the deal would comprise of Tyus Jones, Zaire Williams, a 2023 second, and a 2026 first.
Wow.
I prefer the Trailblazers one, but which one would you have picked between the 2?
Man, that's bizarre because I think if I'm Memphis, I do that in a heartbeat. I mean, defensively, you'd be insane. You'd still keep Dylan Brooks in that grouping, and he's a burly defender on that side. You get OG Anunoby, you still have Desmond Bane, and you've got Jaren behind. Man, that's insane. So if I'm Memphis, you definitely got to throw that out there Tyus is huge as a steady hand behind Ja Morant, and Zaire has upside. He even started some games in the playoffs for them last year, but Eventually that team is going to get too expensive developing internal for super long. We've seen this happen with the Atlanta Hawks. You take too long developing guys, eventually their contracts come due and you can't keep everybody because you can't pay everybody. You guys are experiencing this right now. You can only pay but so much, and that means that some guys get sacrificed. So I think consolidating a little bit by making a trade like that if I'm Memphis is huge. But dude, at the same time, the upside of the picks and Shaden Sharp for Portland, Shaden Sharp alone, I think, could easily be like the best asset of either one of the trades just by
Yeah.
himself. And then I think the actual draft capital from Portland is much better or much likelier to convey.
More valuable. More valuable.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
more arguable to convey in a positive manner for the Toronto Raptors than if you get Memphis's picks, who are probably going to be good for a while, versus
Yeah.
Portland's timeline forever been on Dame's timeline. So I think the better trade has to be the Port. If you're talking from the perspective of Toronto, I think the better trade has to be from Portland. I agree with that. I think if you're Memphis, though, man, you might even need to up the ante just to make that work because I'm not gonna lie. If you can do that trade without giving Dylan Brooks up, I think you gotta heavily consider it. Heavily consider
Yeah.
it.
That just looks nasty. That
Ooh.
front court of Triple J. Even just thinking of Steven Adams, just like even like being popped in
Oh
there
my
sometimes.
God, I forgot about him being in there. Oh my.
It's it's a golden opportunity for Memphis, and they're number 2 in the West. This could
Yeah.
really like OG could really like put him over the top.
Yeah. Plus with a trade like that, because Dylan Brooks is due this summer, it would give them a much tougher decision on Dylan in terms of retaining him. Because then you have to decide, like, all right, are we gonna pay him and then have to pay OG and Desmond Bain like the same summer? Or I think they're gonna be paid in like the same area, or like I think they're gonna have a handful of very nice 3 and D guys you're gonna have to pay over the next 2 to 3 years back to back to back. And Dylan Brooks is the first guy in the pecking order. So that does make things a little bit more complicated, but it also gives you a Dylan Brooks insurance policy as well. If you do choose not to retain Dylan Brooks, you get one more full season of OG before then you have to choose to pay him. And I think if you're Memphis, I think you heavily consider it. I think OG's a better player than Dylan Brooks. So I think if you had to choose the guy you'd more likely want to pay, I'd much rather pay OG than pay. I'd rather have a year and a half of OG and then feel comfortable paying him than go into this offseason and thinking about paying Dylan Brooks, who I think they're still kind of middle of the pack on in terms of whether or not they do want to extend them. Otherwise, I think they probably would have already thrown a significant offer out.
Yeah, no, for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think the realistic trade and the team that's probably will put up the better offer will end up being the Grizzlies. So I do think OG will be a Grizzly after Thursday,
Mm.
but it's gonna be an 8 out of 10. I think it's gonna be an 8 out of 10. Before we move on to the final topic, I do want to throw out this trade because I thought that this was hilarious because of how much we're getting back for OG. And this is to the Pelicans. I think this is highly unlikely, but if I'm the
My
Raptors, I'm taking this
gosh.
in an instant. If I'm taking this in an instant, Devontae Graham, Herb Jones, Dyson Daniels, and 2 unprotected first round picks.
Oh
I'm taking that
man.
instantly if I'm the Raptors. I'm
But
taking
I
that.
mean, I think the crazy part about that, first of all, giving up Herb is tough. That's tough. But OG is kind of Herb. OG is kind of Herb with more on-ball potential. So like that helps you out. But damn, I think that's New Orleans simply doing a consolidation trade because they know they have so many good guys and can't find minutes for all of them. But that's like the only reason I see them doing that. But at the same time, though, getting OG on that team, if you gotta make a consolidation trade, I think OG or Pascal would both be interesting targets if you had to consolidate the wing position and get two-way guys next to Zion, CJ, Brandon. Dang. Yeah,
I think that's a lot.
you gotta take that in a heartbeat if you're Toronto.
Yeah, if that's the offer, but I highly doubt that's going to be available because the Pelicans just love Herb too much, and even their fans. Like I think the fans would be in a riot if they got rid of Herb Jones.
Yeah.
So So yeah, that's definitely something to think about. But hopefully, if that trade comes up, if I'm the Raptors, I'm taking it 100%. Yeah. The final segment of the show, and this is something new we're gonna be trying to do every week, and it's because like it's for my love of quizzes. And if you see me like do some of the TikToks too, I like to show off some of my ball knowledge. And I just like, and the way I like to do that is because I do a lot of NBA quizzes on Sporkle and all this like other like YouTube videos. I just love doing that type of stuff. So, what a segment that we're gonna be starting to do on this podcast is basically a TV quiz for Jay. We might switch it up in the future where he gets one for me in the future, but for right now, I'll be the quiz master, and we're gonna be doing a weekly quiz for Jay and see if he's able to get all the right answers. And this one, this week's quiz is very topical because LeBron James, as of recording, maybe if this is gonna come out the next morning, so maybe he might have broken the record already, but he is 36 points away from beating Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record. But did you also know, Jay, that he is top 10 in assists, threes, free throws, defensive rebounds, steals, games, minutes? But there's one stat that he is already number one all time in, and that is turnovers. He is
jeez.
He is number one all time in turnovers. He's like 400 turnovers more than the next guy, which is crazy. But this is where we're gonna bring you in, Jay. Name me the other 9 players on the top 10 list for turnovers. I'll tell you right now.
Ooh.
I'm gonna tell you right now. A lot of these guys played a lot of years, and it's no one like out of the ordinary in terms of like players that we know. Like they're all like.
So they're guys that like. Oh my gosh.
Okay, just try to throw out some players there. I'll tell you if they're on the list or not. If it gets too hard for you, I will definitely throw out some hints. But let's see what you can get for now.
Okay. Jason Kidd?
Number 6 all time.
Wow. Oh my God. I was not confident in that.
Yeah.
Oh, Russ. Russ has to be in there.
Number 3 all time in turnovers.
Okay, you said guys who like played super long. Oh my gosh.
I would consider all these guys superstars in their time. All these guys are like.
All of them are superstars.
Yeah, all of them are superstars, all-time grades.
Let's go. I mean, if you got to have a lot of assists, you got to have a lot of turnovers, right? Let's go John Stockton.
Number 4.
Okay. Which also has to mean that if you have a lot of turnovers as the point guard, you have to have a lot of turnovers as the dude getting a lot of the receptions. So is Karl Malone like forever?
Number 2.
Like he ended up being a Laker like, at some point.
Yeah, number 2 all time. He is 400 behind LeBron, which is still crazy. LeBron's probably going to finish.
Okay, first of all, that's insane.
Yeah. So you have 2, 3, 4, and 6 right now.
Oh geez. Okay. Is James Harden on it?
He just makes the list at number 10.
Oh my God. Okay, that was a shot in the dark. That was just simple. That was just oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. Number 10.
Played a long time.
You're killing it right now, man. You're killing it.
Okay. Also, I want everybody to understand that I'm going off the dome. I literally just moved my phone because I keep looking down at it, hoping for a prayer, and it's only messages. Oh my God. Isaiah Thomas. Pistons Isaiah Thomas.
No way. Number 8.
Oh my God.
Okay. There's 3 players left. One guard and 2 centers. Interestingly enough.
Centers? Oh God. Who is like Vince Carter in there?
Nope, he is not on the list.
Rondo, maybe?
Nope. All of these are all-time grades.
Dang. Okay.
These are all grades.
Wow.
One, I'm surprised you haven't gotten yet because he had the ball in his hands a lot.
Okay.
I mean,
is AI on the list?
Nope. But it doesn't matter if this guy passes or not. He's gonna have the ball in his hands.
Oh my God, that's brutal. Okay, I'm going for the center position because you said all-time and center, and that list is like so weird, but it's like extremely lengthy. I'm gonna go with my fake guess, which is the one I'm not as comfortable in, and then my random out of nowhere guess because he's like a guy who's top 75, but like only if you watch the tape.
Yeah.
So is Bill Russell on the list?
No, he is not.
Okay, and then my random center guy, I think he played for the Wizards, maybe. Um, is like Artis Gilmore or somebody like that on the list?
No, no, it isn't.
He's not.
No, you have to think bigger. You have to think like in terms of all
Oh
time.
my.
Like these are like I can tell you right now, these guys are probably all top 20 all time.
Okay, wait. Oh, so it's like Moses Malone on the list? Like I said,
Yes,
Okay,
number
Moses is
7.
on there.
And Moses is number
Okay,
7.
okay,
Two more
and
players,
then
the one center, and the one guard.
okay, I don't know if they're counting ABA too or not. Is Julius Irving on the list?
Nope. Nope. I'm surprised.
Oh,
I'm surprised you're not getting the guard because again, if
Ooh.
he's from our era, bro. He's from our era.
Kobe?
Kobe is number 5
Oh,
all time.
that
Or
does make
no.
sense. I view him as more like a high shot guy than a guy who like turns the ball over a lot. I guess that does make sense though. Yeah, he had the ball in his hands a lot. Okay, and so I'm missing a center.
Center again,
Is it
all
like
time great.
Shaq or something?
Nope, you're right era
No.
though. Right era, close to it. Close to it.
Okay, Tim.
Nope. Actually, no. Then you're going too much forward. Go a little bit back.
Oh, okay. Hakeem?
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Hakeem.
Not
Okay. Wow, that's crazy. See, turnovers is such a weird stat because like it does deal with how much you have the ball in your hands, but like those are some really good decision making guys. So like that's so weird.
Yeah.
Dang.
It only makes sense that John Stockton and Carmelo are like
Yeah,
top 5.
those were the two I was like the most. Them and Russ were like the ones. That's why I got those like faster because it was like, okay, John Stockton, Carmelo, they played for a long time. They were a 1-2 punch. So after a while, you kind of just know to cut each other off, and like that's how you help that one out. Russ is usually a high turnover dude, and like and then from there, that things get. Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
TV, I like that. Dang, turnovers is a crazy stat.
That was a crazy one. Just look at this list. The fact that I'm like, damn, these are like all-time greats,
Let me
like
look it up
generational
now.
players.
Let
That
me
is
look it up.
insane. That's crazy. The fact that like all these guys are like top. And honestly, the most surprising one here. I know we're going to be long on this, but Isaiah Thomas didn't even play that long in the league.
I
Like
know.
he only played like 13 seasons, and the fact that he's still top 10 all time.
I guess
I
Isaiah, just because those first couple of seasons with Detroit, they were an offense-based team before they went all bad boy Piston style. So I thought
Yeah,
maybe most of his damage happened there.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, like honestly, I mean, at least a lot of these guys like played a bunch of seasons. But I mean, Isaiah was like the main one. I was like, damn, he only played like 13 seasons, and he's still on this list. That's crazy.
That's crazy, bro. And I mean, Magic's top 15. Patrick Ewing is up here too. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, honestly, like just looking at this list, like the amount of just like Paul Pierce is 12.
What the heck, bro?
It's a weird list, man. It's a weird list. But yeah, if you have any other ideas for quizzes, let us know actually in the comment section below if you have anything. If I'm gonna have something every week, but if I see something in the comment section, if I see something on the Instagram, I might be able to check it out. So definitely drop it. But man, that was a fun first episode. There's gonna be a lot of great episodes to come in the future. This is where we're actually going to do all the plugging right now. So, Jay, tell them where they can find you, like your individual stuff.
Yeah, man. So individually working on a couple different projects, but you can definitely follow me on the Knockdown J on Instagram and TikTok. I've also started a little separate page called Routine Jumper on Instagram primarily right now. And I plan on doing a lot of content with that because I recently started the Routine Jumper Radio podcast, something that I've been doing for the last week and a half. So I got about 3 episodes out. A lot of individual content. Like I said, that stuff will be down below. But the Knockdown J and Routine Jumper is where you can find me. Man, I'm locked in. TV. How about yourself, man? You're doing a lot on your own as well.
Of course. You can find me at TV on Basketball, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. Still going to be doing some daily content over there. We're still going to be doing the picks, so be on the lookout for that as well. So yeah, just check me out on all of those platforms. And if you want to see any of the old podcast stuff, YouTube, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, you can find it all there. Leave some good reviews. And in terms of this podcast, you have to come check it out. Remember to follow us on TikTok, Instagram for the best, and I mean the best daily NBA content. We're gonna be putting those up on YouTube Shorts as well. And remember to don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on all the podcast networks, Spotify, Apple, and of course on YouTube. Help us bring up the numbers now. Tell a friend, all that good stuff. We're gonna be doing this weekly, and you're just gonna just know when you have this type of stuff, you're gonna have a fun time listening. So be on the lookout for that. Again, hit the notification bell as well, so you will not miss an episode. You can find all the video formats of the podcast there as well. It's gonna be you're gonna have it all up there. Usually, what should we say? Like maybe either Tuesday or Wednesday mornings, right? We're gonna say around there.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try to aim for Wednesday mornings. I think is the main one. But just hey, if you hit the notification bell, you will always be aware because we are gonna be locked in every single week. Every single week, we're gonna have some new content, and of course, like TV mentioned, we're gonna have the short form content. We're cranking over here at the Hit Your Free Throws pod. So lock in now because as we get to the trade deadline, as we pass the trade deadline by the next time that we record, man, the news, the content we're gonna have in store is only gonna get crazier.
Yeah, 100%. And you can only do that if you're following us on all the social media platforms, describing here, all that good stuff. Again, awesome first episode. Can't wait to see where the future of this podcast lies. But I think this is where we should end it. Thank you guys for watching or listening. Show us love, all our socials. I just said it right there. But this is where we're going to end things. Thank you guys for watching or listening. This is TV signing out. Over there is Jay. Have an awesome day, guys. Peace.
Peace.